Salut! Am văzut, Monica, și comentarii tău. Ne bucurăm totuși că ești cu noi. Începem. S-ar putea ca Facebook-ul să fie o provocare în seara asta, dar e ok, suntem suficienți pe Zoom încât să zicem că avem o conversație cumva așa restrânsă, în care chiar putem să punem toate întrebările pe care ni le dorim. Și o să, așa cum vă spuneam, o să vorbim astăzi în limba engleză, așa că o să schimb și eu limba ca toți speakerii noștri să ne și înțeleagă. So, my name is Irina Simulescu. I'm Program Manager at Impact Hub Bucharest. And actually, before saying anything else, I would like to wish all the best to all the women watching us. We're really happy that you want to spend some hours from your day with us and learn about a new topic. And also all the best to Gabriela, which is one of our female speakers from today. So we are talking about impact investment, quite a new subject from the Romanian startup ecosystem. And we are going to dive into it together with three speakers that I will introduce a bit later. If you already have questions for them and you know who they are, then we advise you to use not the chat section from Zoom, but the Q&A section, because then we can see in a better organized way all your questions, and we can pick them up, besides all the other chats that you can have in the other section. So first of all, I want to share with you a bit about why we are doing this event and why impact investment is important for Impact Hub Bucharest and for Startarium. And so I will be sharing some slides that I hope you can see. So we have been active in Bucharest and in Romania since 2012. We are happy to celebrate this year 10 years of activity, but 9 so far. We had until now more than 2,500 members in our community. We hosted more than 5,000 events, and we supported more than 700 startups through our programs. As you are with us today, probably we can say that you are at the 951 event that we are doing. Either it's for inspiration or know-how, we are trying to build this for the business ecosystem in Romania. So we are happy that you are with us today. And as Impact Hub in general, but also Impact Hub in Bucharest, our main interventions are related to learning and education and startup support, we are doing this to the most. But then we also intervene in what means institutional innovation, convening, and also ecosystem development. And in 2016, we developed Startarium together with ING as a way to scale our own impact and to reach more entrepreneurs at national level. So for 5 years now, we have reached these numbers. So more than 50,000 registered accounts on the platform, funding, direct funding, either through prizes or financing. We are an education, Startarium is an educational platform, so you can see there for free more than 500 courses or articles or videos that will help you be a better entrepreneur or understand better the business environment. Then related to convening and allies, we are also having more than 100 people there as either mentors or consultants or somehow contributors to the evolution of the startups in Romania. We are also developing a lot of digital tools inside the platform, and more than 5,000 business ideas have been developed through these digital tools. We are serving all strategic stakeholders, including startups and entrepreneurs, corporate allies, supporting allies, and industry media. And also we have these 4 main pillars that are where all the knowledge and information from Startarium is built around. And so if you either want to learn, you want some tools and templates that can help you actually progress in your business, if you want allies to build forward whatever you want to do, and also learn about what types of financing and direct financing you can get, then Startarium is the place to learn about all these things. And last year, we launched Startarium for Good, and Startarium and ING initiative designed to support social businesses. So we are now, since Startarium is a very general platform, we decided to do this program dedicated to social businesses because we thought there is a lot of potential there that can also drive impact, but also financial sustainability. And so the entire Startarium for Good initiatives are built around, well, let's say three pillars. First of all, it's the Impact Accelerator. And this is a scaling program for social businesses aiming to grow their impact and also become financially sustainable. The program is running right now. We started working with 27 participants. Next week on the 15th of March, 10 of them will pitch for a total of 30,000 euros. And we will select 3 winners from that. And we were really happy that we could bring together more than 25 people that would contribute to the development of the participants as trainers, mentors, or coaches. Then we will, and we already have developed some digital content and tools. One of them is Business Model U, which is already available on Startarium, so you can use the tool already. It's an interactive one based on the business model canvas, if it seems somehow familiar. But it's especially useful for social entrepreneurs who are often in the center of their organization. And so we really encourage you to use it and to see what is that business model that you represent, and not just the organization or the business that you run. In April, the second digital content piece that we are going to do is the Sustainable Social Businesses e-course, which will be based on the Startarium for Good Impact Accelerator curricula. So that's why we are finishing now the first phase of the program and then starting to codify everything so more social businesses can work and learn from the curricula that we did for these 27 in this batch. And then, of course, the topic of our conversation is impact investment, and we plan to do several events on this topic, where we want startups or entrepreneur enthusiasts or investors to get more familiar with the concept, understand how the impact investment funds work, how they are different from others, to discover more about what the impact investment investors' profiles, expectations, or contributions are, and much more. And so I would say that I spoke enough for the introduction. And then I'd say that we could start our conversations. And we encourage you from the beginning that you could write your questions in the Q&A section. It's much easier to select them, to see when it's appropriate to ask each of them, and to see for who is it more appropriate to get answered by. So yeah, if you have questions for all the speakers or just for one, please also mention that. It might be useful. So I really want to introduce already the speakers because they have more knowledge than me on the topic. And so, yeah, unfortunately, Adina will not be with us today, but Gabriela, Andrew, and Damien are here with us. And so please unmute yourselves and just say hello so everyone can see you. And then we will have some small presentations from each speaker. You will have time to understand better what they will be speaking about and what kind of questions you can ask. And then at the end, we'll have around half an hour for common conversations. So first we will start with Gabriela, if you can hear us.
Yes, I can. Hello, everybody. Salut tuturor. Îmi pare bine să fiu aici. I'm happy to be here and I'm going to continue in English now. But no, before I do that, la mulți ani de ziua femei. Very important. Romanian greeting for the 8th of March. It's a pleasure to be here. I work with the Impact Hub Network globally. I've been in its leadership for the last 11 years. I'm now in the board of the Impact Hub Network, and I have a long-standing commitment to growing and scaling impact enterprises so that they can make the impact that they promise to the world. And on that route, I have often worked with impact investors. As Impact Hub, we have facilitated quite often connection between enterprises and investors. And also directly, Impact Hub is currently the largest global social enterprise. And we ourselves have had to work with impact investors, get impact investment, and grow globally. So hopefully I'll bring some of those insights around what impact enterprises are, how they grow, and how they attract impact investment. And yeah, I'm here for your questions.
Thank you, Gabriela. And then we go for a short introduction from Andrew.
Hi, everyone. So my Romanian is not quite there, so I'm going to continue in my native language of English. So I'm from New Zealand originally, but I live now in the Czech Republic in Prague, and I'm the impact and investment manager of a fund called Tilia, which I'm going to share a little bit of insight about. And I'm hoping that today I can share sort of what we as impact investors are looking for when we're assessing a founder, and what you as a founder can do to position yourself in a good way to receive and communicate the impact you do and to receive impact investment. And prior to this, I worked in several impact startups myself, and I started my career in management consulting. So yeah, thank you very much for having me, and I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us. And Damien.
Hi, Arina. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation today, and a happy International Women's Day, indeed. Very happy to be here. So I'm Damien. I'm based in Romania. I've been working for like 20 years in the private sector, strategy consultancy, finance. A few years ago, I changed my career. I've got 3 kids and I want to give them a better future, a better planet. And I will present you a few projects I'm involved in Romania.
Thank you so much. So I say we start the presentations. That probably will get us also started with thinking about what questions to ask. But then Gabriela, if you can start, it would be great.
Super. Let's see if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Let's see. Going into full screen. Works fine? Perfect. All right. So let's start the talk. As Irina said, feel free to ask questions along the way. You don't have to wait for the end of the presentation. But basically, I've been asked to talk a little bit more about impact entrepreneurship, what kind of impact enterprises are there, how do they grow, how do they scale, and how do they get impact investment. And I've made a selection of primarily those that have secured impact investment. So if you have any curiosity along the way around any of the cases I'm going to speak about, please feel free to ask. But I'll start with an optimistic slide, because we need that in the world today, maybe more than ever. And unfortunately, in the world today, right, it's very easy to get triggered by the mainstream news and by the war, by the fragmentation, by the social and environmental issues that we're facing. But reality is that behind this increasing crisis, there's also an increasing set of solutions that are developing. And we call that the other world that's happening. And impact entrepreneurship is a core part of that world, of the alternative way of doing business and of addressing social and environmental issues through economic solutions that brings hope and hopefully will bring an alternative to the mainstream systems that we're dealing with today. So let's start with an example, best way to understand what that is. And I bring here the example of HereX, which is a social enterprise from South Africa, Johannesburg. And we're gonna hear, let's see if it works, a quick video introducing them. Irina, tell me if you can hear. I have shared my sound as well.
Annually, 1 million children enter the schooling system in South Africa. But currently, there are no systematic screening programs in place to provide hearing healthcare services to these children. And that is due to a lack of trained personnel and expensive equipment. Early detection and intervention is important for these children to ensure healthy hearing for healthy learning. With this project, we map early childhood development centers in underserved communities in Cape Town. And we're in the process to provide 10,000 children with hearing screening services with the EarScreen application that we developed. The EarScreen app provides clinically valid tests that can be operated by non-professionals that's linked to a cloud-based data management platform. It provides affordable access and linkage to hearing healthcare services, making it possible for Zinhle to be screened at her ECD facility by a community worker.
I'm very happy to be part of this project because it's changing life to the children.
My name is Singatwa. I'm the mother of Mbalenhle Zwele. You mean a lot to us. You're helping us a lot. We as a parent, we really appreciate, guys. It means a lot. We never know where we can be without you. Thank you very much.
Great. Hopefully you were able to hear that well. There's just one story, but I find it quite powerful in the sense that it explains how a social enterprise can scale with a very simple solution, but enabled by technology and with a distribution model that's enabled by community, which is often a model that we see in the scaling structures of social enterprises. So there's a component of a social issue, a technological enabled solution, and a community distribution model that can be one of the recipes of success. And at this point, HereX, for example, has managed to reach over 700,000 of these tests distributed in over 38 countries using that model of distribution that you quickly learned about just a second ago. Now, in essence, based on that example, when we speak about impact enterprises, and I'm using the word impact enterprises rather than social business, which is what you, Irina, said earlier, but I'm using it intentionally because social business comes with a bit of a baggage in our industry, right? It is much more the Muhammad Yunus model that has a specific expectation of how businesses do not distribute their profits. However, at Impact Hub, we work with a broader segment. So there are social businesses, but we work with the broader sector of impact enterprises that, in essence, follow these three criteria. One of them is that their commitment and main focus is on measuring and expanding their social or environmental impact. That's at least equal and ideally above their financial interests. Secondly, they have an ambition to a sustainable business or revenue model. And last but not least, they have representative governance. So the people they serve are also represented in the ownership, in the decision-making, in the product design, not just in the product purchasing or the service purchasing side of the solution. Now, you've seen one example. It's easy to say maybe this is a niche, and it is still somewhat of a niche. However, it is the fastest growing niche in the SME sector globally. That means that soon a majority of SMEs will start considering putting environmental and social objectives equal to their financial ambitions. If you look at what that means for the world, SMEs create over 58% of jobs in the world, and 67% of the global GDP is SMEs. So if the biggest niche in the SME area is impact enterprises, we're probably sitting on top of something that can truly revolutionize the bigger systems, as long as we stay focused, we invest, we stay connected. And in some countries, the progress is quite significant. And I've just given 3 examples there. For example, in the Philippines, 1 in 4 new businesses is an impact business. In the UK and Germany, over 4% of GDP is generated by impact businesses. And in Kenya, over 30% of SGBs, which is small and growing businesses, a subsegment of SMEs, is impact enterprises. So it's starting to become a very relevant niche within economic and social development, and also support environmental objectives, which is why we hope to have more impact investors around the sector and help us grow even further. And it's also recognized widely, not just from an economic kind of data point of view, but also from a sustainable development point of view, as one of the solutions that can marry this social, environmental, and economic axis. Now, let's give another few examples. It's not just TRX and technical solutions. There's a lot of others. For example, one that I thought is quite relevant today, even for Romania, with the ensuing refugee crisis that we're seeing out of Ukraine, Jobs for Refugees. This is a Berlin-based social enterprise. It helps refugees integrate in the job market within Germany and beyond. It helps with training, it helps with matching with potential employers, and also with the actual development support throughout the initial onboarding period of the employee in order to address cultural issues or work behavioral issues, and have the refugees integrate much smoother into the workplace. Another great example, this time from Switzerland, is Kind Upsides. This one basically connects adults with children with social and economic disadvantaged backgrounds, and enrolls in a mentorship program that helps these children get better access to better education, access to better opportunities, and grow their skills and their social integration over time. And they've worked by now with thousands of such children across the country. That's on the social side. I've also brought a few on the environmental side. Pipey is one that I think will definitely make the media headlines. It's basically an alternative solution to water waste in toilets, and can clean up toilets with a very effective chemical solution. And it's largely used in low-income countries, in communities that have water scarcity and cannot afford to use an expensive water solution for their hygiene. Another really wonderful one from Europe, Ionica. These guys have invented a technology that basically is able to recycle any type of PET of any type of purity, which is something that's quite difficult to do today when it comes to PET. And they're able to use these types of PET and make virgin quality new PET that can be reused in the value chain. So a great circularity solution. And oftentimes circularity is again one of those angles to the solutions that we have in social enterprises that can be quite effective for scale. And last but not least, Treedom, that's a global social enterprise. They plant trees around the world, and they have by now planted over 3 million trees with the support of various organizations. They basically gift these trees as corporate gifts, or you can do them as part of your CO2 offset efforts in your company, and so on and so forth. So they relate more to the CO2 footprint, and they work with local farmers to plant and grow these trees around the world, giving those local farmers also an income at the end. And there's many more solutions. I brought 3 more just to say that these are not the only ones. I'm sure there's many in Romania as well. Renature in Brazil works with local smallholder farmers through model farms and teaches them regenerative agriculture, so they can actually step up in the modern supply and value chains and be able to increase their yield and use sustainable practices in their agriculture, giving them a new livelihood. Mom Spring works with low-income women, giving them a 24/7 service for certified midwives anywhere in the country, and this is a huge country with very bad infrastructure. Their solution is not internet-based, is offline, which is fantastic, and is able to support any woman that needs pregnancy care across the country with a 24/7 hours availability. And last but not least is Ignitia. That's a social enterprise that's scaling from Europe around the world. This one is basically a solution that has the best accuracy for weather forecasting and provides this information free of charge to smallholder farmers around the world, helping them basically increase their yields and be able to connect the smallholder farmers with supply chains across the world. There's many more of these stories, right? But again, as Impact Hub, we work with about 24,000 of these entrepreneurs around the world in over 60 countries. And overall, if you look at them, they're great stories, they're scaling, they have benefited from impact investment, but there are still 4 main areas of need that most of these social enterprises have needed on their pathway for growth. First of all is the issue of awareness, oftentimes marketing, promotion, getting out there, getting to be seen, understood, and getting to be prioritized by customers and by society and by their various stakeholders. Secondly is their access to market and capacity to scale. Oftentimes we see that there is investment available sometimes, but the markets are not aligned to provide an opportunity to scale. So we urge more focus on access to markets and on growing that capacity to scale within these solutions. Of course, they need access to finance. I'm sure we're here to talk about that and see how impact investors can contribute to this. And in particular, finance that's long-term, that's early stage, that's willing to be risky, and that's impact outcomes orientated, not just financial outcomes orientated. And last but not least, of course, like any other businesses, then they need an environment where the ease of doing such social business is high. And that means that there are lower barriers to entry in the market, better regulation and recognition in the regulations for this kind of enterprises, institutional framework support, and widely available impact measurement and management, education tools, and affordable ways to do it. As Impact Hub, the way we address these needs is by connecting entrepreneurs and innovators to companies, investors, and the public sector to enable inclusive and green innovation. I think Irina was talking earlier about that. And we do that in many different ways. We do that through community. We do that through offering a wide variety of entrepreneurial support, from incubation to acceleration to scaling programs, to facilitating connection to investors and funding. We also offer physical and virtual infrastructure, and we facilitate inclusive and green innovation. So we work directly with public and corporate organizations and also with philanthropic organizations for them to understand impact enterprises and open up for innovation, and include these impact enterprises in their supply and value chains, because it's much easier for an impact investor to invest if there is a market, right? And if you have a client and if you are part of a supplier value chain, and that is more attractive and more long-term sustainable if the investment comes together with this focus on revenue and on connection with relevant public and private supply and value chains. We do that with a variety of partners around the world, and these are just some at the global level that I thought are relevant. For example, we work very closely with GIZ, which is the development agency from Germany. Like recently in Ghana and Nigeria, for example, in the New Economy Booster program, where we supported over 500 innovations to start, help incubate them, and then with the top 30, we entered an accelerator. These innovations were basically COVID response solutions around the country. And that's also an interesting element. Of course, many impact enterprises start from passion and purpose, but it's also important to be quite deeply rooted into the broader social and environmental dynamics and issues to be able to get better investment and more relevance over time. So here, COVID, for example, provided a really good opportunity for the best solutions to stand up and to actually provide care instead of maybe more classic, less innovative solutions, because they were more agile to respond to a crisis like COVID, right? Than maybe some of the established services. New Roots is another great program with GoDaddy. GoDaddy is a large corporate providing internet domains, and with them we work with disadvantaged group entrepreneurs. So basically, we have a program where we work with BAME backgrounds, so minority background entrepreneurs, or for example, mothers that have been long-term unemployed and they're coming back to work and they're considering entrepreneurship as an alternative. And particularly social entrepreneurship. And we've been successfully doing that across the UK and across Germany. Beyond Bold is a program with Roche globally, who also in response to the increasing health crisis that, today it feels like it's secondary, but it's still out there and it's still killing many lives. They're looking at creating new solutions together with startups, particularly tech startups, to have more responsive medical services to their clients. And they have engaged in a scaling program, selected 10 solutions, and are piloting these new offerings to their customers around the world. Similar to that, in Cote d'Ivoire, we're working also with Roche to address cancer patients' journeys and new solutions for the support, the treatment, and also the integration of cancer patients across the supply and value chain from the medicine side. And also to basically demystify cancer and make screening a part of everyday life. So prevention, not just post illness intervention, but also prevention of cancer. And there's many social enterprises that have great solutions for this. And last but not least, and Impact Hub Bucharest is a very active part of this. We work with IKEA around the world on connecting impact enterprises in their supply chain. In particular, we worked on food, on packaging, and on materials innovation, and scouted from across the world social enterprises that can scale and that can fit into their broader supply chain, offering a more sustainable and inclusive solution than the current enterprises that they work with. And Impact Hub Bucharest is a very key part of this program, Adina in particular, although she can't be with us today. So that's what impact enterprises are. That's what we do with them. That's are some of the examples of the ones that are successful. And in closing, for me, when it comes to success, besides having great solutions that are relevant to the social or environmental issues of the day, I think in order to get impact investment, it's these 2 points, the 2 and 3 that are key. One of them is thinking of access to market and capacity to scale from the beginning, not after you've designed your social business. Like really think around what's your market, what are you going to scale from your social enterprise. Sometimes it's the products or the service, sometimes it's the knowledge, sometimes it's just the distribution model. There's many different ways to scale, and you need to be very, very clear and refine that before getting that investment to grow. And of course, is the access to finance. Without that balance between access to market, capacity to scale, and access to finance, there's going to be a lot of difficulty on the way. So with that, I'm going to pass it to the impact investors to hear the investor side of this conversation.
Thank you, Gabriela. Actually, we have some questions. I think the first one is, I also wrote it down because it's something that it's quite often asked to us, and we can see it with the social businesses we are working with, but you also mentioned it before, that many times social businesses think that they are doing this product or service that is having a positive impact and it's a good thing, and so they expect that the customers will come just because it brings maybe some value in their life, but not always it happens. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what do you think the social entrepreneurs miss from this whole business combination somehow? Okay, impact and also business, but what do you think it's missing that they don't think about that much, and they just say, oh, I have a good product, why don't people want it or use it?
I think it is, at the end of the day, is this access to market component. Do you understand the broader market? If you look at the classic enterprises, right, they have a lot of studies around the size of their markets, who are the big players, what are the supply and value chains, their actual data and understanding of the markets they navigate within is quite significant. And if I look at many impact enterprises, we're much deeper on the understanding of the community and of the product or service we offer, but maybe the understanding of that market is sometimes lacking. And that is a problem to scale, right? Because we make many assumptions around, as you say, customers will come. Well, they don't come. They are somewhere. You need to go there. You need to understand it, right? So I think a bigger investment in this market understanding and connecting to supply and value chains intentionally is unfortunately where we see often the lack. And it does trip you at the end of the day, right? Because even if your product is making a significant impact in one community, if it cannot be refined and codified to something that can scale, and if there's no client for that scale, yeah, you won't get the investment, you won't grow.
Yeah, also in one of the sessions from the Impact Accelerator that we are doing, we were having this conversation that since we were working with the businesses in order to find some strategies to scale, one of the topics was that unless you start to standardize some things and to codify them, then you will not know what to scale or how to scale it. So this is a very important point.
Yeah, and I would say also from our own experience at Impact Hub, right? So initially we developed organically, like most impact enterprises, right? Like just people found out about us and they showed up in an Impact Hub and they were inspired. But that brought us to 15 locations, not to 107. It's only after we started codifying us, after we started investing in actually understanding our customer group and target group, being proactive, that we started scaling for real. And even there, after we scaled in, let's say, the more familiar markets that we understood well, we again got into a trap, right? And we couldn't expand in new markets because we hadn't invested enough in understanding new markets. We were just understanding our core market. So that investment in market understanding and market expansion is relevant if you want to scale, and is relevant all along the way, not just at the beginning, basically.
Thank you. And we have another question in the Q&A section, and it's addressed to you. Can you see it yourself, or do you want me to read it for you? No?
I'm just reading it, yeah?
Yeah.
How many years? That is $1 million question, the timing. It really depends on your solution, right? So there are solutions that grow quite fast, in particular the ones that are tech-enabled and not so community cultural dependent, right? Those ones scale fast. But many impact enterprises have only a part tech and a lot of it non-tech, right? So human support, so you need to train people, you need to get new partners. So there's a lot of them that are not following that easy tech solution format. And also a lot of them require a lot of contextualization before they scale, right? So it's unfortunate, but if you want to scale fast, you go with a tech-enabled and not a very culturally customized solution. So something that really works across cultures. And there are examples of that. I think HereX, for example, is one good one in that direction, right? It's a very low threshold to use their technology. It works in English, in very easy English across the world. They've now translated it. It works with very low skill communities, so you don't need to have highly expert people that you need to train. You can work with communities that have low skill. So if you do that, you can be fast. But honestly, I think 1 year is way too little even in that solution. I would say put yourself in the 3 to 5 year mindset and maybe towards 10 to see through scale. And it's an impact enterprise. We're not tech enterprises. You're not building it and leaving it in a year, basically.
Thank you. Okay, so we are moving on to Andrew. Thank you, Gabriela. We'll be probably asking some questions also to you at the end of the event. So Andrew, if you can hear us and share your presentation, it would be great.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Gabriela. I actually have a page full of notes. You were teaching me a lot, so thank you. I'm going to try to give the other side of the table from the story that Gabriela just shared. So what it's like for us as impact investors. what we're looking for, and how do we assess the deals. So I'm hoping that this will be a kind of practical guide. Like Gabriela said, like a lot of startups are not necessarily ready for VC or impact capital for a year or a couple of years. So it also gives you a lot of time to sort of think about the things that you need to prepare for when you approach us. So I'm going to try not to repeat anything that has already been said. So yeah, the UN had a really fantastic framework of describing things that need to, areas of improvement that we need to make as a world, really. And it's interesting when you create a kind of framework, you also start to improve, I think, the quality of the conversations. And it's also given us a really good framework to take things which were previously just seen as philanthropic or people doing good or filling market failures, etc., and to kind of give it a label. And this label is relatively new. So I think the word impact investing is maybe only, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. And entering like the regular venture capital vernacular is probably only 3 years ago. So it's still sort of evolving. So I'm going to give my interpretation of it according to the sources that we as a fund, Tilia, subscribe to, our philosophy. So essentially, it's companies that are founded with the intention of generating a societal or environmental impact alongside financial return. So it cannot be just a consequence that they generate some impact, and it cannot be just a kind of side effect of, you know, we've got some profit, so we'll donate it, etc. And you can roughly divide the types of impact that businesses do at a generic level. So some of them are reducing damage that's being done. Some of them are doing the opposite, which is benefiting certain stakeholders. And some are just contributing platform technological solutions, which other people can build on top of to do one of A or B. And then the way that we look at impact can roughly be seen in 2 dimensions. So there's a kind of depth. So that's what kind of, how profound is the change to the problem that you're trying to address as a company? And then there's a sort of breadth, which is the scale. So that's how many people can you, with your solution, can you actually impact with this change? And often you find some companies are doing very superficial changes to many people. And sometimes that is very impactful because of just the sheer scale of it. And likewise, we've also worked with companies that are doing very, very profound change, but for quite a niche group of people. And we have to have a bit of a framework to be able to compare those side by side, because this is our job as impact investors, is we have a limited funding and limited time that we can put into trying to help our companies grow. And we have to be able to somehow quantify and compare the companies that we're investing into. So this is our sort of eternal struggle that I want to talk you through. So where does impact investing fit within the general kind of investing landscape? So essentially, there's a theory, and this is our theory, that there are a set of investable companies that have the scale that can generate market or slightly below market returns for the relative risk that early stage companies have, for which their primary purpose is to generate impact. So maybe in plain English, that we believe that we can still return the necessary capital back to our investors to compensate them for the fact that investing in young companies is extremely risky. And at the same time, we can make some really meaningful change, that there's not a direct trade-off, which has been a traditional view, that the more good you do, that's generally the lower the returns of the business. So over to us as a fund. So what is the difference? And this is a question I think we get asked all the time. What's the difference between a traditional VC who's doing, say, I don't know, a climate deal, as opposed to an impact fund? What makes us different? And it's actually quite nuanced, because we essentially take every aspect of our company and align it so that the incentives are such that we will maximize the impact first as a fund, and the finance kind of comes second to us. So first is when we're looking at a company, when we're screening it, we first make sure that they're actually aligned to some that their reason to be is to solve some kind of societal or environmental problem. and we score them. So we score them based on, do they understand the impact, those scale and change magnitudes that I described earlier. Then when we go into the due diligence and the deal preparation, we want to see that companies have thought about the change that they're trying to make. And there's a really good framework to communicate that as a company that's called Theory of Change. And I can put links maybe through Irina afterwards. Or you can Google it. So we really love when startups approach us with a theory of change, because it shows that this is really their primary sort of reason to be. And we also like to know that they can talk about how they measure the change that they are making, and that they have some meaningful thresholds or targets of what kind of change they think they can make. And then finally, once we invest in a company, then we really put a lot of effort into trying to maximize the change that they can make. So it's not a compliance thing. We're really trying to help founders who want to make change to really maximize the change that they can make. So if that means helping them to communicate the change, helping them to measure it, report it, to structure it, to get it taken seriously, and also often to go into bat for the founder with a group of other investors, because generally the older our companies get, the more traditional investors into the cap table. And so we are sort of there as an ambassador for change. And often that means, that we are kind of having tough conversations with other VCs as the companies progress in their lifetime. And that goes all the way up to us actually as a fund. So our incentives, even our carried interest, are directly linked to the impact that we can generate. And if we have time, I might go into that, just because that is quite an interesting concept of how you link financials to impact. We also have a dedicated impact manager who's kind of helping. So VCs need to add value to the companies that they invest in. And a lot of VCs, or some don't, but some just give money and then get out of the way, and that's nice too. But what a lot of VCs are trying to, add hiring help and being on your governance. So we do that because we have a team of experienced entrepreneurs, founders, and technological people. But what we also do is we have a dedicated impact manager, FTE. And her job on the team is really to help to structure the teams properly so that they can record, manage, and report the change that they are making. Maybe one thing that makes us different to traditional VCs is that we operate very, very collaborative. So we kind of have a symbiotic relationship with a lot of VCs where they're happy to share deals with us and vice versa, because our incentives are slightly different, even though our field of vision often overlaps. And it has a really positive effect, I think, for both of us, that there's not such an element of competition, which really helps us. So very quickly about how do we measure impact. So essentially what we want to do is take something which is not fungible. So you cannot say that your carbons are equal to my vision improvement, are equal to your health outcomes. But we try to baseline, what is the change that's happening as a result of this company existing, and what would it be like if they didn't exist? And then we try to measure how our companies perform against that baseline. So first we have to set, is their threshold and their target acceptable? And then we measure essentially how they perform to those targets. We give that a scoring and a weighting based on our allocation of money across our fund. And then we roll that up, and that will become an index, which is a number between 0 and 1. And essentially, if we cannot hit 0.6, so if we don't hit 60% of the impact that we intend to make as a fund at a portfolio level, then we're not eligible for any of the carried interest that's linked to that part. Any of the carried interest that's really generated from the fund. And instead, it would rather be donated to charitable causes that are aligned to our philosophy. And we're actually okay with that. Everybody is aligned that this is what we are trying to do with our time. The ecosystem in the whole of the CEE region is really exploding now. So the appetite for doing more impact deals, even from traditional VCs, is really It's mostly being led by climate, to be honest, but it's really exploding. So we're seeing a lot of VCs get into our space, which is fantastic because like the area needs more capital, and also it provides a steady stream of follow-on investment for our young companies. So we have sort of become a trampoline or a slingshot to get change-oriented founders and put them on the stage where they're able to access traditional venture capital. There's a really good database. It's called impactdatabase.eu, and you can find quite a comprehensive list of all of the impact funds in the region. So I encourage you to have a look at that if you are thinking about raising from an impact investor. And then I wanted to share a little bit about us, Tilia. So we're currently on our pilot fund, and the idea was we wanted to prove to our LPs that they could get this this trade-off between, or this lack of trade-off between decent returns and very impactful investments. And we wanted to prove also that sufficient deal flow existed in the region. We ended up proving that actually too quickly, and we've already deployed our fund, and now we're raising our second fund. So we're kind of in a purgatory while we raise our second fund at the moment. But it's allowed us to reflect and actually expand the ambition of the fund. So we have 4 areas that we're making impact, that we're looking for companies in. So first is social inclusion and civic empowerment. Education's the second, and then probably the big area that a lot of people think of when they think of impact is the environment and sustainability, but also access to health and well-being. And we invest at the moment, we lead the pre-seed stage. So our ticket sizes are around 200,000 euros, and we're investing in companies that tend to have some sort of product, some sort of traction, a few early customers that really love it, a clear business model, so that it's not really, that really differentiates it from, say, an NGO project, and they're ready to start to scale up. So like to the question that popped up earlier, I think that's the toughest question: how long should my company take? Because often it takes as long as it takes for a company to get to the point where they get this kind of product market fit and they're ready to scale. And there are basically 2 ways that you can kind of get there. And I very, very much encourage a lot of impact founders to seek non-dilutive grant funding. There is really a lot of funding out there that will help you get through the swings and roundabouts and pivots that you need before you can be ready perhaps for our kind of funding. Because like both Gabriela and Irina said, you need to have some sort of business that can clearly scale before we're actually able to deploy our funds into your investment, into your company. But good news is that we can do that through different instruments. So we use convertible notes and safe notes when it's just unclear what a clear valuation for the company should be. When there's particular business models or perhaps levels of risk, we can use debt. And we have a certain amount of debt and mezzanine loans that we can offer out of the fund. And they are, I think, a lot more founder friendly because they cap your, they're unsecured loans that cap your even your downside to a certain amount of interest. So yeah, it is quite friendly, I think, for founders compared to traditional VC, that we really want to see you succeed, and we're willing to take, I think, more risk with less upside as an impact fund, because in turn, our LPs know what they've invested their money for. So to quickly go through our portfolio and give you a flavor of who is in our portfolio. So we have Dutlab that are doing some really amazing data mining and exposing corruption and public spending. And they've managed to scale this in a really amazing way. So they've been involved in some very high scale political fraud cases. And it's really been fantastic to watch them grow. Miwa is a reverse logistics kind of package-free end-to-end supply chain. Dot Glasses are targeting bottom of the pyramid. They're trying to get very, very low cost eye vision to as many people as possible in developing nations. And they're, to another one of Gabriela's points, access to the market and solving the distribution problem. Sometimes that is the solution, actually just the uniqueness of how you distribute. And this is very much the case with Dot Glasses, that they've come up with a model where it leaves enough margin in it for each of the people along the supply chain that it doesn't break down along the way. You actually end up getting the glasses to where they need to go. Circle, I'm on the board of Circle, so it's my pet project and my favorite. It's a waste, we don't like to say waste, but it's a waste to resource marketplace where companies are able to realize financial gains for things that they're otherwise disposing of. And we have a communications platform for linking up sign translators with hearing impaired people. I realize a little bit conscious of time, so I might rush through this, but every year we publish an impact report where we try to quantify the impact that we're delivering, and it kind of helps to hold us accountable. So we're happy to share that later on. And then finally, so what are we looking for when we screen a deal? So the first is that you really have this intentional, measurable, and scalable impact. And there's a fantastic resource called the Impact Management Project. There's a framework for helping you think through like who are the stakeholders, what are you doing, and how are you really changing their lives. And if you communicate it to us in this way, it's very easy for us to understand it, and it helps us a lot. We also like to see that as much as possible that your business is directly aligned to the impact that you're trying to do. I mean, this is the easiest business for us to invest in, is that for every X that you do, every unit of service or unit of sales that you make, that you're directly generating impact. It starts to, when you have different stakeholders that are subsidizing things, and it starts to become quite difficult both to scale and for us to invest into. So one tool to analyze this for yourself is to look at this impact value chain, which is essentially starting with what you do and then ending with the change that you'd like to see, and just ensuring that it really does link up. And we are always asking this question when we see new founders: why hasn't this been solved before? So good answers are a new enabling technology has just existed, or that there's been some new innovation in the delivery techniques, or maybe it's a regulatory change. What we don't want to hear is no one has thought of it and there's no competition. And because I can guarantee you, especially with impact projects, someone has tried it and it hasn't worked, and you need to understand why it hasn't worked. And that's where the real innovations come. Also, most important thing for us, because especially with when you have these different dimensions of trying to do well and grow a financially stable company, that you're constantly balancing with trying to help as many people as possible. We need to know that we're philosophically aligned with the founder, because we don't know where we're going to end up. We only know that we're going to be there with the same people we start with. So most important for us is really to get a feel for the founder and make sure that that we're philosophically aligned. Yeah, so I'll wrap it up there, but I'm really happy to take any questions or to follow up if anybody wants to know more.
Thank you, Andrew. Right now, we don't have questions in the Q&A section, but I do recall a question from the application form that we had, which was related to what you and Gabriela mentioned at some point about being more open to invest in businesses that already have some traction. But still, one question was, how can an early stage startup with no business results yet can still make a good business case and get the interest of impact investors? So how would that business case look like that would catch your attention somehow, even though it doesn't have any kind of customers yet?
So in my mind, there's no such thing as too early. There's just the right investor for the stage of the company. So at our stage, we need to see that, but it doesn't mean that every investor who could possibly give you money, or any source of finance is probably the right word to use, needs to actually see the same things. So earlier than us in this, let's say, life cycle of a company, you'll find a lot of angel investors. And these angel investors are often, if you have a compelling idea and you seem like a great person and they are mission aligned to you and they really want to back you, they tend to back people rather than traction or ideas. But probably most of all, I would really encourage to link up with a program that specializes in getting people from it being an idea through to being investable by someone like us. So those are accelerators like what you're doing at Starterium. There's incubators that will take companies that are just a little, that have already gone through the acceleration stage and need a little bit more help. And then there are many, many sources of grants, a lot of companies that are trying to give back to the community, especially in our area, that are willing to sponsor things that are within the thesis of the change that they're trying to make. So you really just need to look. I think if you don't see a source of financing for whatever stage you are, you're not looking hard enough. And I am very, very happy to help people who approach us that we like the founder. I'm really happy to point them earlier down the stream and say, we'll see you in a year, but here are 10 places you could go.
Thank you, Andrew. Actually, Gabriela has a question.
Yes, I do, since you opened it up. Thank you, Andrew. Great to hear more about your work. I've been watching you from before, so I knew about you, and it's great work, particularly that you guys focus on CE and the Czech Republic in particular, which there aren't so many focused there, but hopefully we'll see more, and I do know there's more happening. I have a question, which is a bit of a devil's advocate from having actually pitched to impact investors myself, right, as Impact Hub, and also by supporting others. So what do you offer that's unique as a fund, right? Because you're asking a lot of an enterprise and a lot more than they would normally be asked for in a bank conversation, right? Or in a standard VC conversation, right? The theory of change, the deep impact measurement, all of these elements, in a way, if I take the entrepreneur side, is additional cost and hassle, right? So what's my return from doing that and actually coming back not only with financial results that are at market or under market, because you said you're also looking at slightly under market, right? But let's say I'm returning that impact that we have agreed on the KPIs. What's the benefit? What's the return you provide? Do you offer better interest rates? Do you offer higher risk guarantees? What's your return for the effort of the entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I would put that into several categories. I think the first, probably the largest reason why we get approached by companies that probably could otherwise raise traditional VC finance is signaling, and you can't really understate the importance of that. So it's taken a lot of VCs that want to say that their company is or a portfolio company of theirs that they invested at Series A or Series B is a kind of impact startup. There's a lot of noise, and to see through the noise, we all investors look for signals. An important signal for those investors is that an impact investor is there early on from day one. And because of that, a lot of founders will come to us first, even if they could otherwise seek VC capital. Second is that we are probably more willing to make it work than a VC would. And examples of that are, actually, I think it's really sad how limited the portfolio of a lot of VCs is, that they have to be pure tech. They can't be too capital intensive. Their time to market has to be limited. They have to hockey stick within the first 3 years, So we are willing to make more compromises, and we have the flexibility from our LPs to do so. And then finally, I hope it's the support that we get the founders. I don't want anything that we do to be a burden. We ask for these things because they help the founders, and really in the long run, to understand even what they are doing, and to, they become a kind of constitution for the companies. We don't want to create compliance. It's the last thing that we want to do. And if there is compliance, then we are in the trenches digging it with them.
Cool, awesome, thanks.
Thank you, Gabriela. Thank you, Andrew. I would say we go to Damien and then see if we have questions by the end of the event for everyone. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone again.
So maybe if you can stop sharing your presentation, Andrew, so Damien could share his. Perfect. Thank you.
Here we are. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Congrats, Gabriela, Andrew, for your great projects and presentations. I think it's going to be quite complementary what I'm going to present you now. There are a lot of slides, so I'll go through a few of them quite fast. Don't hesitate to ask questions afterwards if you have. I'm gonna present you 4 projects I'm involved in. First one, Ateliere, Frontiere, which means workshops without border. Starting from this, why we do it. As you probably all know, now we consume a lot more than what the planet can offer, nearly 2 planets at the moment. When you purchase a TV set that is probably built in China and is arriving in your home, it's 11 kilograms and it requires 2.5 tons of materials. Not too good for the planet. And we were used to linear economy like 50 years ago. We moved to recycling economy. And now we talk more and more about circular economy. Reuse, refurbish, repair, repurpose, rot for bio-waste. And this is where Ateliere Frontiere is mainly active. So that's for the resources side. For the job side, the social side of our activity, when we treat 1,000 tons of waste, these are figures from Reuse Network, it does create a lot of jobs. You can see here for textile, 35 jobs, for like furniture, 75 jobs, for electronics, 140 jobs. If we did recondition 1% of all these products in Europe today, would create 200,000 jobs. These jobs are repetitive, they don't require any diploma, and they are perfectly suited for work integration social enterprises. And if we go in that direction, we will create green and an inclusive society. That's what we do. We recruit persons with different vulnerabilities. You can see here domestic violence, school dropout, homelessness, etc. Meaning anybody who has got no chance in a conventional company is welcome in Ateliere Frontiere. We say yes. There is one interview just to assess the motivation. If the person is motivated, the person comes with us, works for us, gets an employment contract for up to 2 years. We have got social assistant that can help all the social aspects like housing, financial, kids, whatever. And in the meantime, we created some workshops so that people can actually work. We created 3 workshops. The first one was created in 2008. We collect waste electrical and electronic equipment, which we recondition, we refurbish. We are the only entity, commercial or not, in Romania allowed by Ministry of Environment to refurbish WEEZ. We decided to focus on desktops, which are easier to refurbish, and we decided to donate them to schools. The second workshop is like 10-year-old now. It's called Remesh. We collect advertising banners, the big ones that you can see in the street, made of plastic, which actually there is no recycling or any way to not damage the environment after their use, and we turn them into home and deco products. The third workshop is a farm, a social farm based next to Bucharest, and we produce eco-certified vegetables that we deliver to delivery points in Bucharest. We're not using any plastic, not heating our greenhouses, reusing our baskets, and helping the environment as much as we can as part of the farm to fork, which is a lot communicated at the moment at a European level. Our impacts, SDGs were already presented. We do have an action on all of them, but we focus mainly on 8 of these SDGs. The first one is on the no poverty side. These are the figures from last year, 2021, whereby 19 of our beneficiaries did go back to the conventional job market after spending between 1 and 2 years within our workshops. On the zero hunger side, we do provide vegetables, as I said, and nearly 5,000 baskets were delivered in Bucharest to our consumer actors. On the quality education, as I said, we give computers. Since the beginning of our activities, we donated to more than 10% of all the schools in Romania, refurbished computers. The digital gap is massive between Romania and most countries in Europe. Kids do not have access to not enough dispositive computers, etc. And we try to help lowering this gap. Decent work and economic growth. All the time, we've got a little bit more than 30 opened jobs within Ateliere Frontiere, which, as I said before, are green jobs. We opened just now a sheltered unit, whereby we hire persons with disabilities. And normally we do not have any type of vulnerability, and we accept anybody. And on this particular is because there is a fiscal advantage for big companies to work with certain units. So we did open one, which is mainly for remesh sewing workshop activity. For the responsible consumption and production, obviously, is the fact that we collect and that we refurbish. So we collect nearly 200 tons every year, of which 1/3 is reused. On the climate action, we organize a lot of events. We do a lot of awareness campaigns. Here is at the farm, for instance. This is the French ambassador, where we invite all our clients and all the people, and it's a good opportunity to remind and to talk about our subjects. We're also involved in quite a few projects at European level, Norwegian level. These are a few countries here we work with at the moment, which help mainly for the advocacy side, to help change laws at Romanian and European level, so that as I said at the beginning, the continent becomes a little bit more inclusive. For what we do have aside from the direct impacts, we also have some awards. These are some Romanian awards received last year, or at the beginning of this year, like the Green Report Gala, which was in January this year. We also last year received a few European awards. The last one was in December by the ESC, where we were third on the climate action for our climate action activities, which we're really proud of. And that's it for Ateliere, fără Frontiere. So this is the first activity. This is historically we started a long time ago, 2008, which has got strong impacts. We grow every year, and we want to grow even more and faster. Second activity. Let's forget completely about what I just said. Now we move to Smart Impact Capital, which started 2 years ago, working with Ateliere, fără Frontiere, and having, let's say, the network, thanks to all the activities that we do. A group of 11 investors grouped together, and here's a bit similar to what Andrew presented. So I will go quite fast into that. Together we said, okay, let's try to see what we can do. We want to invest in a growing startup which have got a positive impact. We're enthusiastic, etc., and we invest. So where we target are mainly in Romania, mainly early or very, very early stages, between 10 and 100,000 euros, with the objective to be impactful. Anything we will invest in will be, in fact, impactful. And here is a few examples of companies we invested in over the past year and a half, 2 years, and we're very proud of all the companies here. And here again, objective is not to stay at this stage and to go further. You can find more information on the impactcapital.org. Third subject, where we started this in December 2020 with other people motivated, this time about making the cities. This is a subject that is important to me. I've got a daughter and she's starting to have allergies. The air is extremely polluted in a lot of cities in Romania, but mainly in Bucharest where I live. One thing that can help is to make the cities green, to start growing our vegetables, to start composting, and so that's why we decided to activate and to open this company. So what do we do concretely? We do gardens, corporate gardens. If you're working in a company and then you've got an empty space in your city, we are happy to come and install this and make some training to your teams and making training to people so that anybody knows how to grow vegetable and then they can apply it at their home. And this will have definitely an impact on resilience, especially at the moment. So this is the kind of things that we do at Urban Culture. And so the first thing is gardening. The second part is composting, which has an impact which is the same or even bigger. Let's stop trashing our bio waste and sending them 150 or 200 kilometers away from the cities we live in to burn them or to put them in the earth. It's terrible. And it's so simple to start composting locally. So anybody who's got a little bit of area outside or even on their balconies, try to see and to find a solution. So this is what we offer, this kind of boxes. There are community composters that are installed at the moment in a few cities in Romania and in a few sectors in Bucharest. And we also deliver some at individual flooded gardens. And we will activate more and more with all sorts of solutions in the near future. And this is, for instance, in sector 2 of district 2 of Bucharest. On the left-hand side, it was before, like a year ago. On the right-hand side is the way it looks now. So it's not only ecological impact, but also training people, educating, and changing the city. That's it for urban culture. And the last project, sorry, I'm moving from one project to another very fast, that we are involved in is something completely different. This is an NGO this time, where we want to give the transition, the green transition, a boost. We are 8 persons from very different backgrounds this time. People with doctorates from universities, entrepreneurs, business, and we all have in our heart the fact that we want people to be educated, because if we want to change our country, our continent, our planet, everybody needs to be at the same level of information regarding carbon footprint, emission, etc. And one activity that we started is Climate Fresk, which you may know, that we start implementing in Romania in order to have groups of between 5 and 10%. It's a serious game. People come out of this 2-3 hours Fresk game, knowing what is the impact of humanity on the planet. And this year we will implement a part 2, which will be what is your personal impact on the planet and what is your action plan so that you can behave. And that's it. That's it for me. I hope it was clear. Please do not hesitate to ask any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Damien. So I wanted to ask you, since you have this double role somehow, you're also very involved in making impact yourself or through the organizations you're part of, but also being an investor, putting money where others make impact. I was curious about what do you look at and how do you select the startups you decide to invest in? What are the most important things for you as an investor?
Well, for me, I think it's going to be similar to what Andrew was saying earlier on. It will be the same answer. Having said that, I don't know. The main impact, the main objective is the impact. If I can see that it's positive I'm thinking of my kids all the time. That's why there are these 4 logos here. Whatever I do is for my kids. And if I invest any money in any company, I want them to be proud of it and to see this company still existing in 30 years and doing good for their environment. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
And I had a quick question too, because what I found interesting in the investment fund side of the activities, first of all, congratulations. Wow, that's a lot of awesome initiatives. But I saw that you're also doing smaller ticket sizes, so even up to 10,000 euros, which is quite special, I would say, in the impact investor side, and I wonder, how do you go about these smaller ticket items? How do you use them? If you can speak a little bit about these smaller ticket items as well.
What I can say is that it's not easy. It's not easy because it's very time consuming. So especially being 11 in the funds, just to meet, to organize and to see organizations, it's very chronophagic, very time consuming. Yeah, that's a definite constraint. Just to receive all the pitches and to analyze them before even meeting, all that is it's complicated, I must say. But we do focus and we do identify here and there some potential small tickets, let's say.
Maybe building a bit on Gabriela's questions, I was interested in, normal, let's say general investors are usually very interested also in knowing from from the beginning about the exit strategy of the entrepreneur. Okay, you want this kind of investment, but then what's your strategy for your exit? And I'm curious from an impact investor perspective if this is important, or if you are more interested in an entrepreneur that stays more in the business and builds it for a greater impact.
But I'll just talk about myself here then. I understand investors who like to hear about an exit strategy right from the beginning, or you can think that it's a good way of presenting it. And I'm the contrary. If the company has the startup actually has something good, and you can see that there is potential, there is some traction, it's irrelevant, in my opinion, exit strategy. There will be one. There's no point in thinking about it at the beginning. And it's going to be a good one.
Thank you, Damien.
Maybe just,
I just want to add, oh, sorry, you go, Gabriela.
No, it's okay. You started.
I just wanted to add a small nuance to that like in theory, I completely agree with you. Our unfortunate constraint is the closed-end fund structure. So for people who maybe don't understand that, is the way that our funds work is we raise our money at the beginning of a 10-year cycle. The investors allow us to invest that money for between 4 or 5 years, and we have to spend the next 4 or 5 years paying them back. And unfortunately, 10 years, it's not a long time in the life of a real impactful company, but it is a long time for some personal person to put their money to put their money away and have it completely illiquid. So unfortunately, that has been the kind of prevailing trade-off that investors are willing to make. So to get around that, we try to partner with other investors who would buy out our stake as we go on, so that we don't affect really the trajectory of the company. We're not forcing the company to change itself. It's just that we can quietly leave through the door when it reaches, say, Series B or something. So often we'll put clauses where we are allowed to do a private sale outside of the capital of the business. Although philosophically, I would love to see more patient capital, where you have evergreen funds, rolling funds, but you need a huge amount of liquidity and scale. This is really the realm of the Sequoias of the world. You need to have funds that are much, much bigger than us. So unfortunately, I predict that impact investing will actually consolidate to several very, very large funds rather than the micro funds that we see at the moment.
I'll just add my nuance here. Saying, having received impact investment, and we've received both patient and exit-oriented kind of impact investment, to be honest. Of course, it's better if we have the people for the long term, right? We can grow the investment, as you said, Andrew, of course, that's the ideal. But I found also the quick turnaround option helpful sometimes, because they were very focused on a particular growth target that we had, right? They brought us there, and they were committed to search for the next investor with us. And that's a big help for the entrepreneur if I don't have to be alone searching for the next investment, knowing that as with any fund, you are limited, right? You will be able to give me 200K. For me to get global, I need 3 million, not 200K, right? So as long as I know you're also a partner with me in that direction, even if you have a shorter lifespan yourselves in your fund, for me, it was also a valuable relationship. Actually, it ended up helping significantly the business over time. Because you have a champion, and you have a champion that speaks and validates that you are a trustworthy, investable business, basically, beyond yourself, who you're seen obviously as a biased party. But the one thing that I'm a little bit cautious around this exit is not investing in the management team and in the organizational backbone of the organization. So there's often this focus on the entrepreneur, like the person that is the core of that social business, and particularly in social business, even more so, right? Because often the entrepreneur has a very powerful story, often a trauma or some sort of personal experience that have led them to want to make a difference. but organizations that scale need to be bigger than any one individual. And sometimes investors, instead of allowing some part of their investment to go into a management team or a broader organizational investment, they narrow it down around this person and actually even put clauses that the person can't leave, right? And I'm challenging a bit that mindset. I think we need to work with investors to understand building organizations beyond people that can be there for the long term. And yes, individuals can have a big contribution to these organizations, but if they become actually a weakness in the structure, that's a risk, right? So instead of tying them there, can we build better investment in management teams, organizational capabilities, and long-term infrastructure? And that, I think, in our sector, we need to grow both on the investor and on the entrepreneur side, a better appreciation of that piece.
Thank you, Gabriela. Actually, I intended to ask something that is quite the opposite of what you were saying, but you have a point there, you know, because I was thinking that a lot of investors and, you know, businesses usually are about relationships between people and not just, you know, relationships between companies. So how an investor gets along or is on the same page or has the same mission, how Andrew was saying, with the entrepreneur is super important. And I wanted to ask, as an maybe individual, but also as an entrepreneur, as a manager, as a leader, what kind of skills or attitudes or behaviors are important for you as investors? But I would also refer to Gabriela's input somehow, like if you see it more than him or her as an individual, the entrepreneur, or how much do you go deeper into how the organizational culture is and how the other team members are, not just the founders, let's say, you know, which is usually the most important thing. Okay, how are the shares divided and what kind of, I don't know, knowledge do the founders have, but also what's happening with the team, who is the team, how are they as an organization. So first is, okay, what's important as skill or behavior or attitude of the entrepreneur, but also related to how he manages the team and the organization itself. And if that is important, and if that is, you know, that would be something important for you to, you know, take the decision that, yes, I'm going to invest in this team, maybe more than in.
Yeah, so absolutely. So to both of your point, it really depends on the stage of the business, because often we're seeing businesses that are really just a founder and any mate that they can help them build something, or, you know, so when I say founder, it doesn't mean that we're only looking at the founder, especially when we get into later stage. So our second fund, everything will have a 0 on the end, so our check size will be like significantly larger than the current check size, and also the way we assess our entrepreneurs will have to change completely. And it goes really to what you said, that the most important thing there is that the founder knows what they don't know and is humble enough to bring in the right people to cover their skill gaps. Because actually, like what Gabriela said, at some point, the founder is probably not the right person to be taking the company to a certain level. And if we have some egotistical, narcissistic person at that thing that could possibly suffocate the growth of a young company. So we look for people who are very mission oriented, but humble, and really understand that as the company grows, that they will have to bring in the right people, and that for any particular stage, they've surrounded themselves with the right people. Also, sorry, on that note, also it really, incentive alignment really matters. So we look to make sure that the founder is not trying to take control and ownership of everything. We want to know that all the way through the company, employees have adequate options or any other incentive structure which is tied to the impact, ideally, that they're trying to generate. And we also have to hang out with the founders and the team and see how the organizational culture flows down. because you can feel it. You just need to be in a room with a whole team meeting for an hour to see whether they're really mission aligned or not.
That's a very good point around incentive. I think that's, and it's hard to guess, right, in the due diligence process, because obviously everybody's trying to impress in a due diligence process, right? So I think that's interesting. One other reflection around the profile is the question of bias, right? If we look at the impact investment data, it is better than mainstream investment in terms of it going to women or people from disadvantaged backgrounds, but not hugely better, unfortunately. Not at the level we would expect to see, right? And that's something else that I particularly appreciate in some impact investors who have understood this, that they make additional effort to make sure it is not the same old, basically men, not necessarily old, middle-aged, but generally good with maths and with an impressive, charismatic personality, and usually with a good social or financial network around them, right? Which basically means more close to middle class than from a disadvantaged background. And the type of templates that we use in the due diligence, the type of formats we use in the due diligence processes for investment basically incentivize that profile of person to most likely be successful than not, right? Throughout it. So I also really appreciate that some impact investors are really careful around these gender lenses, the vulnerability lenses, and make an additional effort to make a due diligence process that allows people with different backgrounds to also get access to funding. But I do think we need to do more, even in our sector. The statistics don't look great, actually, globally around that. They look rather shameful, I would say, for social economy that says we're prioritizing that profile. And as a woman myself, I have met discrimination in the due diligence process, for sure, from small things, from jokes around football in one of the meetings. And I'm like, sorry, but I'm not into football. I don't give a damn about football, right? That doesn't mean I'm a bad person or I can't make a connection with you, right? From small things like this to bigger things like, you know, I don't have an MBA, and there was another entrepreneur that had their CFO who has an MBA, and that's very glamorous and interesting in an investment process. So there's small and big things that can easily create bias in impact investment. And I really appreciate those of you who are making an effort around addressing that and making a big effort to go into communities that look different and also need that investment. And oftentimes are more committed, speaking of incentives and of commitment to scale, oftentimes people with these backgrounds are 10 times more committed to make it work over time, but they need that initial chance and belief from an investor.
Gabriela, to your point of the MBA, there's a question in the Q&A around the role that education is playing in investments. And I'm not sure if my interpretation of that question is quite right, but it's the level of education of the founder. Is that how I should take that? So it doesn't matter at all. Oh, sorry.
So if you want to say something around that, I think it would also be valuable, but we try to understand better the question, and it's more related to, and I would make it maybe a broader question actually. Gabriela has a business in non-formal education, and she was interested if for you as investors, this would be a topic that you would invest in. But I would even go further with it, as in how interesting are for you maybe non-tech businesses compared to the ones that are tech and, you know, maybe easily to scale, or, you know, if they can go to a certain type of client somehow, maybe at some point. So what do you think about non-formal education, but also about non-tech businesses?
Yeah, so if there's a clear inequity or a problem that needs addressing, then we are happy to be seeing such projects and to be supporting such projects, regardless of whether they are, you know, in selling books or in selling, I don't know, online courses or something more technological. There is a little bit of like things which require longer cycles and are more capital intensive. are a little bit harder to jump into at early stage. So for example, a lot of content businesses, education is a tricky one because often it orients around content, and building great content takes a lot of time and a lot of money. And it can definitely be a little bit harder. So I would really, back to the point I made earlier about grants, corporate partnerships, mentors, these are the things you really need before I think an impact investor can start. Or perhaps you just need an impact investor that's really willing to allocate the riskiest part of their portfolio to take a punt on you, which we all do.
Thank you, Andrew. Maybe Damien, if you have any opinion on the subject.
Yeah, let me add something here, but I'm not too sure Andrew or Gabriela are gonna agree with me. But I have got the feelings that in the past few years, if you put the word tech, you've got more chance to win. And
Yeah.
I'm against it. I think the product, the service, whatever it is, if it doesn't need tech, it's much better. Let's not add this tech thing because it doesn't necessarily bring scalability. Sometimes it makes things more complicated. And if it's yeah, there are more capital incentive indeed. If you talk about, I don't know, whatever that is more around products, gardening, whatever. But for composting, we don't need necessarily to have it connected to our phone. And so that's one thing, just on investment side. Just more generally on our society, we all complain that we're all the time in front of our phones. Let's try not to finance too many things that make us be even more in front of our phones. That's it.
No, I'm with you around being cautious on the tech side. Yes, they're the easier scalable ones. But I do think everybody should be aware of technology because you could even use non-proprietary technology to scale your business, right? And I actually would recommend more that to social enterprises than creating their own tech necessarily, unless they are so well equipped and they have the funds, right? To your point, Andrew, because that's also going to be a lot of money. So unless you're lucky to have people with that profile and the investment for it, actually use platforms that are out there, technology that is out there, and you focus on your community, on your service, on your product, as you say, right, and make that relevant. So you take tech into account, but you do not have to be a tech company. No.
Thank you. Another question from, well, my side until we have others from the participants are maybe more directed to the investors, but also you, Gabriela, if you know such cases, since we as a network, we work with so many startups. I was curious about what kind of mistakes do the entrepreneurs make when approaching you for funding? Maybe in the way they do that, maybe in how their pitches look like, maybe regarding on their financial asks or impact, I don't know, assumptions or anything. What are the main mistakes that you have seen at the startups you have been working with, or that you have not been working with since, yeah, they didn't maybe pass your evaluation criteria? Whoever wants to start.
Yeah, I don't know. Main mistakes, some surprises. Let's say that some pitches, some figures are obviously completely wrong. And I'm not an expert in most fields, and you see some things that are really, why is that possible? And you can tell, I mean, so I think there are some background checking, especially because we are more at an early stage probably compared to Andrew, but sometimes we are really surprised, let's say. And to seek advice to maybe brick and mortar old companies, people with a lot of experience before going into some 10 slides to say that I've got a magic idea and let's try to get some financing. It's not that fast. So to seek as many advice as possible from as many people in the field you want to invest in before going to any potential investor.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I would add a couple of other points. One is we often see projects that we cannot differentiate between a non-profit and a scalable business. And I think if there's any shadow of doubt just in the business that you do, whether it would typically be run as an NGO and sponsored by someone other than the person who's consuming the product, then you really need to go out of your way to over communicate the business in that to us so that we can share your vision there. And I think that's maybe a lack of preparation. So to what Damien was saying, that I really get ready for talking to investors, because if we can't see the business in it, it's very hard for us to invest as investors. And the second is people thinking that they can solve a problem that they don't really understand, especially if it's someone else's problem. And you often see this with like European businesses entering developing markets. They don't really understand the trials and tribulations of distribution channels, of incentives, of the relative like cultural differences, and they design products for themselves that don't really actually apply to the problems that they're trying to solve. And we've seen this so many times. From like very, very clever technical solutions for people who don't want to use technology, or it comes up again and again.
Yeah, and to complement what Andrew was saying, it's very obvious, but do an MVP as small as possible. Prove that at least somebody is buying or somebody is interested in what you're offering. It's as that anybody can do, whatever most ideas you can do. So do it, I think.
Market and a previous point, Andrew, you made around understanding your competition. We hear way too often this, there's no competition, we are the best thing that happened. I'm like, no, you haven't checked enough. And somehow it's even seen as an insult, but what do you mean? Like, I'm dedicated, like it's this unique thing that I came up with, and it's not. Like, you just need to be on top of it, and you're going to improve your product and service by knowing that. So competitive landscaping and actually being on top of that data is also quite unusual, I would say, for people to know. And an often question I got from impact investors in the process.
I wouldn't even understate the idea. So I would say for every good, impactful idea, there's even 5 people in Prague right now who are working on it. And we've seen, we've maybe met quite a few of them, and we still hear there's no competition. And we're thinking even just in our small city, we've seen your competition popping up. And it probably means it's a good idea, because it's drawing great intellectual capital to solving the idea. So maybe the timing is perfect for it. But yeah, like to what you say, you really have to keep your eyes and ears out of who else is working on it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, in all our programs, we also try to highlight this as much as possible, because it's not, and usually entrepreneurs try to compare and find something exactly the same. And since maybe nothing is exactly the same, they say it doesn't exist. Something like that doesn't exist, because it's that small differentiator somehow exists, of course, but highlight that and not say that no one does it like you do it. Okay.
And even if they do, look, for example, the Impact Hub and WeWork, right? We hate the comparison with WeWork, because we're not a co-working space. That's how we think of ourselves, right? But reality is, whether we like it or not, we also run a co-working business line. It's one of our 4 business lines, right? And we need to understand what they do, or others like them, right? So that just makes your point. Yes, they're not the same, and there's plenty of differentiators between them and us. But when it comes to our revenue model, there is a direct competition with them, and we need to understand it. And we might choose to collaborate sometimes. Just because you're thinking of competition doesn't mean you can make super smart partnerships with those supposed competitors. That's another, I think, bias people have around this competition logic out there.
Okay. So now in the end, I was actually expecting more questions from the participants, but it seems that I'm getting my answers. So I'm also happy with this context as well. I wanted to ask for maybe from Andrew and Damien more. In what kind of maybe industries you are searching for investing in startups in the next 6 months, for example? Is it any kind of field that is there more somehow important for you, or it doesn't matter?
Let me answer that one fast. It's quite easy. It's and I'm gonna put some tech to the words I'm gonna use: agri-tech and food tech. That's where I see the need, not the potential, but the need.
Okay.
We like, while we are kind of thesis driven and we do have our ideas of areas of impact that we'd like to see, so we are sort of hunting some particular areas, but we try to stay as agnostic as we can across our 4 areas. So it's really education, access to health, especially for elderly, social inclusion, especially for underprivileged and underrepresented peoples, and then climate is just, unfortunately, climate is becoming a huge part of the portfolio because the deals just look so interesting financially, which is why we have to really temper ourselves and make sure that we're allocating as we set out to, agnostically across our 4 areas.
Okay, thank you. And now I think we should approach somehow the end of the event. And so we still have people around that are still interested in the topic. And I'm just curious if you would give them one advice about how to prepare better for their next investment round. That would be from impact investors. What should their focus be?
I'll go, and it relates to something I think we pointed out earlier around what exactly are you scaling, being very, very clear and spending enough time around not only identifying that, but validating that it can scale, and hence understanding where and how it can scale, so the market and so on. So I think we sometimes rush and make a lot of assumptions around what scales. And as I said earlier, sometimes it's your product or your specific solution you're doing. Sometimes it's your technology. Sometimes it's your knowledge. Sometimes it's your distribution model. There's many other options of what actually might scale from your original idea, particularly at early stage. You have a lot of assumptions around that, and many of those are not validated. So before you go looking for investment, which comes in the form of loans, mezzanine capital, or equity, you should have some stronger appreciation of that and be confident, because it's also going to be easier for you to then invest the capital in the best way for growth when you're certain of that, right? And yeah, that might sometimes take 5 years to figure out. In fact, if you look at some of the research around social enterprises, this incubation period where you validate what scales usually is longer than regular enterprises. So don't be afraid of that. Use grants, use patient capital, use friends and family, use crowdfunding. Actually, we didn't mention that very often in the conversation, but I do want to encourage that also to be considered for this early phase. And only once that's clear, then okay, go for the bigger ticket items and for getting more commercial investment, because that's going to put additional pressure on your commercial model. And if you don't have something to scale, it's going to create more stress and more disconnect for you rather than help over time. So that would be my encouragement.
Thank you, Gabriela.
I think Gabriela kind of took the words out of my mouth there about really exhausting all your early stage, more founder friendly and impact friendly sources at the very beginning before there's commercial pressure. I would just add one thing that I often see through the life of our startups that we fund is they kind of are fighting a battle between short-term financial sustainability, which sometimes comes at trading off some short-term impact, because you're really trying to build a business first and foremost. Because if you don't have a sustainable business, you can't scale to generate long-term true impact. So we often see startups sacrificing their long-term longevity because they're trying to maximize their short-term impact. And we would like to see that the founders really understand that they're, don't beat themselves up too much and are honest with themselves and with us, that sometimes they need to build a business first in order to lay the groundwork to maximize the impact that they're going to make in the long run.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay. You made me think. I'm not gonna go into the business side. Make sure it's for you. Make sure you are fit for that, because it's gonna be a long way. It's difficult, and make sure you do it with people you have fun with. That's because the process is long. If you start and you can see from the beginning that it might not work very well, stop right now and try to find other business partners, and maybe find a mentor or mentors too, to be with you, because if you're on your own, it's tough.
Okay, so now that people are getting a bit anxious that we are ending the event, some questions popped up in the Q&A section. So if you still have some minutes, it would be great to answer. So Sabina is saying, thank you so much. Do you have any reading recommendations, especially regarding this understanding of the market and scaling? So if you have something like that.
My favorite book that I've read recently, which kind of addresses this point, is by the CEO of, I think it's Kleiner Perkins, John Doerr, and he wrote a book called Speed and Scale. It just came out at the end of last year, and it's a very practical way that they are trying to address climate change. But essentially, it shows this chicken and egg between, you need scale to bring the cost down, so that these things become actually able to be consumed by consumers, like plant-based meats, like electric vehicles, batteries, so you have this chicken and egg, but you need to produce the things in order to get the scale. And it's the idea that venture capital, especially extremely risky venture capital, is the thing in the middle. And how can you like line yourself up as a founder for that? So it's very climate change focused, but it's a fantastic book for getting the ethos for VCs going forward.
I've just put a book recommendation in the chat. It's basically written by some quite reputable social economy scholars. There are not too many of them out there in the world. So the ones we have, we should follow. And basically they're talking around innovation and scaling models for impact enterprises. And they have concrete case studies. There's basically 5 global, pretty renowned case studies, but very good data on how they thought of markets of growth, what experiments worked in scaling, what experiments failed in scaling, actually, plenty of them. So I found it very practical, and I found it a better expectation setting framework for social entrepreneurs than maybe mainstream innovation and scaling logics that I've seen out there.
Okay, and my answer is going to be a non-answer. Even though reading is very important and is key, I think time is important to spend it to grow your network, wherever it is. Network makes your power, and the more people you know, the more you know people, and they know you, the more chance you have to succeed. So reading is good, but any minute spent meeting somebody new is definitely useful.
Thank you all. And we have another question. So if you have any kind of other ideas, you can also write them in the chat. So Christian is having a question. What sort of compromises are allowed for a business that looks to make a significant impact on the environment and on the perception of people through the services it provides? For example, we are a bike courier company whose mission is to prove that using bicycles or e-scooters for last mile deliveries inside urban areas is the future, and that it is the most sustainable means of transportation in the city. But sometimes we are forced to use conventional fossil fuel cars for complementing our operation, especially during the winter days. How can this affect the overall perception of our mission in the eyes of investors and clients?
I think this is exactly the point I was trying to make earlier, that don't beat yourself up, that maybe this is a temporary bridge in order to prove your product or prove some demand for it. And as long as you can communicate that this is a stepping stone and that you understand it and you're going somewhere else, we can completely buy into that journey.
In fact, I think the impact management project that you referred to earlier, right? They speak also in most impact logics, you need to also identify what is your negative impact. Like in your case, you're pretty clear about it, but there's many other impact enterprises that also have negative impact and they're not clear about it. And that is actually an alarm bell when you say that everything is positive and there's no negative, right? And you're not doing anything to address the negative. So in your case, you're aware of it. And as Andrew says, if you're doing something to tackle it and there is a trajectory at which you'll be able to resolve that, that's okay. It is an acceptable impact logic. Of course, as long as you have a plan, right? So if there's no plan to resolve it, then yeah, then that's a problem.
Nothing to add, I agree.
Okay. So thank you so much to all of you, Gabriela, Andrew, Damien. Thank you for taking the time and joining us and sharing some of the insights from different perspectives that you have about impact investment. For me, it was very insightful. I hope that also for the participants. And yeah, we spent some 2 hours learning very interesting things. So thank you for that. Yeah, for all of you, I hope it was a good experience. Please let us know if you have any other questions that maybe we as Startarium can contribute to. We're going to make a follow-up material after this. All of you will receive an email in the next days with the recording and some materials from the meeting. So thank you all. Enjoy your evening. Again, all the best to all the women in the house. And yeah, have a wonderful spring, even though it doesn't really look like that so much in this period. But yes, thank you and take care.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot for hosting us.
Bye.
Bye.